this is the final part of this introductory presentation on Happy Readers Literacy Program. Looking at part 4, what we now want to look at is the project cycle and how we actually implement before we move on to the next teacher training section. This will be the last of the overview presentations. As we saw in the first part, we have a project cycle, and this is how our cycle that we've defined works. We start at the top, stage 1 with the schools, and for a project we basically identify schools, we map themselves, and we allocate materials. A big part of that is securing the funding for the project from donors, sponsors, etc. And then when we start with part 2, which is the teacher training workshops, which is where we provide the pupils books, we provide the teacher and class resources, and we train and certify the teachers. And that's exactly what we're doing here today, is that teacher training workshop. So books have been allocated, funding has been secured, and it's now the kickstart of the program. The implementation of the program is done at schools by the teachers, supported and supervised by the Ministry of Education and various reading support activities. And this is important to recognize because the implementation is done at the schools by the schools, not with external intervention. What we do have is various ways of monitoring the progress, because we want to make sure that the children are actually using the program and are progressing in the appropriate manner. The bulk of this work is done at school by the teachers, and then there are external elements as well done by ministry inspectors and or education partner coordinators. We feed back that information to the donors, and then we actually conduct reading assessments where we actually measure the reading ability. We normally do a baseline test before the use of Happy Readers. This is important. Before any use of Happy Readers, we should conduct a baseline reading test. We monitor and then we're monitoring the progress, and then we test again after a year, 2 years, etc. Reading development is a long, slow process. It's not something we want to measure every 2 weeks or possibly even every term, but generally an annual basis provides a good measure of the development of reading over 5 years. And those are the 5 main elements of the project model. We then move from step 5 into deepening, where we go back, we do another round of workshops, teacher training, another round of materials, moving on to level 2, and then we do the cycle again of implementation, monitoring, assessment, and then we go back again and do the same thing for level 3. One of the other stages we do is we expand the project, go into more schools, other districts with the same or other donors. So that's the overall view of the cycle. What we provide are the support materials to support this project cycle. This is all actually a defined methodology in a great big manual, but we provide the books materials, the teacher training, the assessment tools, and the project implementation. So the project model that we look at, if we look at what we're trying to reach the learners, right? But the learners are part, obviously, of the community in which they live, and they are attending a school. We generally find the program works best in the school's environment, and it's the teachers who are in the schools who provide the teaching to the learners, and this is all supervised by the Ministry of Education. The key point here is that we work with the existing Ministry of Education structures and protocols to develop, equip, and empower teachers to teach learners to read. And this aids in the sustainability once the project activities have ended. So the first stage we do is we provide the books and materials, and these are provided to the school. So the school is the custodian of the materials. So they are used year after year after year with new waves of learners coming in and passing through the school. Our next stage is to train the teachers, which is what we're doing here today, so that you are fully equipped, fully made aware of the scheme, how it's been developed, what the principles are, and how to use it effectively, and all the support tools around that. The implementation at schools is the predominant responsibility of the teachers, and some implementation support can also look at providing books and materials into the community directly in for example, community libraries, to help with children having more time to read the schools. The monitoring of progress is now a collaborative effort. It's between the schools, the teachers, the Ministry of Education, and the education partner, and indeed ourselves as Happy Readers. And then the last bit is to assess the reading ability, right, of the learners directly themselves, and this is actually what learners can read rather than third-party reporting about it. We want to measure the outcomes of the project in terms of the number of pupils who've actually been reached and actually used the scheme and how many modules they have done, and the improvements in their reading. So if we start with implementing literacy, the first thing we do is we provide the literacy books and materials, because this is essential. You've got to have good materials that work. And that is what we have put an awful lot of effort into developing. And we package our materials in what we call a class box. And basically a class box contains 12 sets of 9 pupils' books, along with teacher and classroom support materials, like what you see up there, posters, word cards, flashcards, packages, etc. We have progress monitoring tools for the teachers to use to record the progress of children, and individual cards. And then we have activities and word games to reinforce the learning and to make it fun. There are 4 different levels for class box. There's a pre-reading one, then there's level 1, level 2, and level 3, each of which contain different materials. And there's also a numeracy box as well. And each class box we reckon serves a class of up to 48 pupils. Where we have very large classes, such as in many schools in Malawi, we either need to provide additional class boxes or additional spare books, or we have to use some very clever scheduling to make sure that children get a chance to read the books. But in general, we allocate the quantities per school based on the enrollments and the grades targeted. These are delivered to schools at the training workshops and need to be signed for by the heads. The next stage of implementing literacy is to host a teacher training workshop, which is what we're doing today in the district, as to train teachers how to use Happy Readers effectively. Again, we try and do this in very close collaboration with the Ministry of Education. And really what we're showing you is we're introducing the schemes, and then we're going to cover the reading fundamentals and how to use Happy Readers. And that component there will form the next part of this teacher training, which is the bulk of the direct hands-on teacher training. We have some fun activities, and what we aim is that teachers will leave motivated by the training and empowered with the tools to implement immediately. So we don't do training without tools, and we don't give out tools without the training. And some of the feedback we've had, generally you find teachers rate the course at an average of 9 out of 10, and an average certification mark for the certification, an average score 89%. We encourage cascade training of teachers back at the schools, but ideally we need to train as many teachers as possible during the trainings. Okay? And really the aim is to empower teachers to implement the program with minimal need for external intervention. So looking at implementation in the class, it's done by the schools, the teachers, the ministries, not by externals, because the aim is self-sustainability year after year after year. We need to look at the availability of timetable reading lessons. One of the issues we find is that you need more time allocated reading than we generally find in many curricula. So if there's not enough time in the allocated sessions, then can we add extra afternoon sessions? Can we add early morning sessions? But this is really up to the school to decide, the heads, the teachers, etc., what they're going to do. We very much want to be integrated with official reading initiatives. Happy Readers should support and complement them, not replace them. The grades targeted, we generally tend to target the early grades. In Zimbabwe, it's grades 1, 2, 3. In Malawi, Zambia, it'll be possibly grade or standard 2, 3, 4, 5. Generally, it ties in with when the ministry advises the start of English language learning. The program is also very effectively used for remediation in the middle to upper grades, but again, we have to look at the volume of books and the number of books available versus the large number of children that need to use them. The key to success we see is that children want to read the books, and this is from all the feedback we get, is the teachers and also the teachers enjoy and feel comfortable with using the scheme. We don't make it too complex, we don't make it too hard, we don't expect the teachers to develop vast amounts of their own materials. We try to provide all the materials that you need to implement the program effectively. What a very key point is teachers using the progress monitoring or reading register forms to record each child's progress. We'll look at that just now. And each child also has an individual reading card that is marked off by the teacher when they reach certain milestones in their progress through Happy Readers. If we look at implementing out of class, are there ways we can involve home community support for the child learning to read? And this is often a very difficult area because a lot of parents either don't have the time, some of them may struggle with reading themselves, and this is one of the things that children really miss out on, is having the individual one-on-one time at home where the parents help them to learn to read and complement what's done in class. There are various community reading initiatives. This is not something we do as Happy Readers per se, but we certainly support those where they are done. What we can provide is homework sheets whereby parents can help with reading without the need for the child to take the books home. We can suggest having reading materials in the community libraries, and this is again an area where we can put Happy Readers books not only in the school but in the library so that children can draw the books and read them on their own. Okay, and we add in then general reading and library book donations, and then local community materials creation as and where that is appropriate. One of the other things we like is reading competitions, which can encourage children to focus on reading and read more Happy Readers. We can do inter-school competitions with prizes. It generates school pride and confidence. Whilst we don't specifically organize this ourselves, we do have ready-made competition tools should any group of schools or project wish to organize this. We can provide the tools that help to manage and administer it. Some of the challenges we find with implementation, and again it comes down to it's the amount of time allocated to reading on the timetable. Learning to read takes time and effort. We generally have a shortage of reading materials. Both of the Happy Readers, no matter how many we provide, we find the general answer is we haven't got enough books, which is a good problem to have. It's a problem of popularity, but also we need to have other reading matter as well to broaden the children's reading ability. In terms of aspects of teacher training, literacy is very much early grade curriculum. But what about upper grades who are struggling? Many of the upper grade teachers, there's no time allocated for teaching kids to read because the curriculum assumes that's all been done for lower grades. We find teachers generally want more training and also want specific guidelines on integration with teaching timetable and other ministry initiatives. Again, this is not something that we as Happy Readers can do, but we certainly encourage ministries to assist in this area. But in general, we often find ministry officers are often overloaded with various initiatives, be they reading initiatives or NGO initiatives, etc. So we want to try and minimize the workload on them. And we've also got to see our teachers motivated to provide extra reading sessions. Now let's look at monitoring progress. Okay, we provide a reading register booklet. There are 8 booklets per class box, each of which will cope with up to 7 classes of up to 60 children. The teacher should record the latest book completed by each learner and the date completed. Happy Readers book, as it is. Ideally, it should be updated weekly, and heads and TIC should monitor this closely. This is an absolutely key aspect of making the program work effectively. And at the end of the school year, the reading register should be passed up to the next grade, moving with the pupils. And the reason for this is that some pupils will not necessarily complete the full level program in a given grade year. And if they move up, say, from the 3rd grade up to the 4th grade, and the 4th grade is using level 2, and the 3rd grade is using level 1, if a child has not completed all the level 1 books, they will really struggle to pick up with the level 2s. So the idea is that regardless of what grade the child is in, the Happy Readers progress should be step by step and doing all the books in sequence. And we have 1 reading register booklet per Happy Readers level. We will be bringing out new ones that cover all levels in the same register, but for the moment, each level has its own register. In addition to that, shown like there, we have an individual reading card, which is 1 card per child, And the teacher records when they complete each group of 3 books, each colour group. And it's dated and signed, and the child then keeps the card to show their parents, their peers, the next teacher, etc. It's a very good motivational tool, and it lasts a child through the entire 3-level Happy Readers program. Then we have a summary reading register, which is a single page. At the end of each term, this should take a summary snapshot of the reading register. The reading register can get very big, very complex, especially when you've got lots of children. What we want to measure is the snapshot. How many pupils have done book 1? How many have done book 2? How many have done book 3 at the end of each term? Okay, and we see an example there, the grade 3A. There are 5 pupils, and this is taken as a summary from the register here at the top. We've got 5 pupils have done book 1, 2 pupils have done book 2, and only 1 has done book 3. Would be an example. And what we then look at the end of term 2, we'd say, well, how many more have done book 1, how many more book 2, how many more book 3, etc., until we gradually fill that all the pupils have completed all the 9 books. Okay. We have external progress monitoring tools for external visits checks. We check, are Happy Readers books at the school? Are they being used? Which grades? Which classes are using them? Is the reading register being kept up to date? We take copies of the reading registers to feed into the summaries. We gather general feedback from the heads and teachers and pupils, and we have developed a form for this to gather that information. This is generally done either by the Ministry of Education inspectors or by the project coordinator. And then we gather the summary of the reading registers, and then those are fed back for analysis and reporting. What we also have is school feedbacks form, which is a single pager, which is generally done at the workshops to gather the heads' feedback there and then, without the need to go and visit each school. Now, lastly, on the stage, we look at measuring literacy outcomes. In order to do this, we do reading tests at the schools. Generally, we test in Zimbabwe, it's grades 2, 3, 4, 5. In Malawi, we'd probably test standard 3, 4, 5, and 6. Although we can test upper grades as well. Generally, we either do 1 full class per grade or a sample of 30 pupils, especially where there's a very large group. But they should be randomly sampled, not the best readers. Therefore, they should be chosen by someone who's not the teacher. We provide a reading testing tool, which is a single booklet with all the tools and forms, and this can be used at all grade levels, from very, very basic reading ability right up to fluency. And the key thing is we can detect changes even at low ability levels. We have 4 basic tests. There's letter recognition, word reading, sentence or passage reading, and we have 5 levels of those, and then comprehension for each level. And these produce outcomes or scores that we use to measure of what we call, first of all, the 0-word score rate, how many pupils cannot read a single word. We then measure the base literacy rate, based on the ability to read a minimum number of words from a list. We then measure the fluency, the reading fluency. This comes from the sentence and passage reading. And then we derive what we call a full literacy rate, which includes fluency and comprehension. So we measure how many children can recognize their letters, read a minimum number of words, meet a minimum fluency threshold, and answer 3 out of 5 questions, because that's the real measure of literacy. And often these are very, very low. We generally test before starting Happy Readers, and then annually, typically over 2 to 3 years. We try and test the same grades each year. The data is captured, validated, and analyzed. And then we like to link it back to Happy Readers. We use the progress data from the reading registers for each child to measure the link between the Happy Readers progress and the child's reading performance. So just to summarize the M&E tools, monitoring and evaluation tools we have, in the schools used by the teachers, we have reading register level 1, level 2, now level 3, and the individual reading record card. And then the external tools, we have the summary of reading registers, the school visit booklets, and then school survey questionnaires. In terms of testing readability, we have quick reading tests and a PLAP to Happy Readers chart. The PLAP is a program in Zimbabwe that also tries to measure reading for progress. But generally, our reading ability tests are external. So we have the reading test booklets, the green V4 and T4 booklets, and we have reading competition booklets as well. One of the things we're looking to develop is continuous assessment sections. One of the things you can do without any external tools is use the back sections of the Happy Readers books. Look at the words, the passage reading, dictation, comprehension, etc. And then, as we mentioned before, the reading competitions can provide an independent check on reading ability and progress. We try to incentivize schools and children to get more Happy Readers books read by all children.